he decided to take me to court for the ownership of Planet.
Wow.
If I walk away, because I was done at that point, I will never know if I could have won. We're sitting on the sofa with my phone between us, and the phone rings. I pick it up. It's the administrator, and he said,
I can't fathom why you would choose to put another layer of somebody else on top of you. You're trying to be somebody else, or you're trying to be different people at different times.
but when you have a plan and you create the vision, which is the what, the business plan is the how. What's the worst that could happen? Let's go into the mud here and
Own it.
dig it out.
Welcome back, everybody, to the podcast. And today I'm delighted to be joined by Renée Elliott. Renée, you are the founder of Planet Organic, and you pioneered the retailing of organic food and drink in the UK back in the 90s. When I was busy setting up New Covent Garden Soup Company, you were doing this. Tell us a little bit what it was like to start out in those early days, pioneering something that had never been done before, certainly at the scale that you envisaged. What was Planet Organic all about, and why did you want to do it?
To make a long story as short as possible, I had a belief from a young age that I wanted to do something good with my life, to make a positive impact, because I believe that our life is quite precious. You know, there's a saying I love from the American poet Mary Oliver, now tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? And I think I felt that from when I was about 19 years old. So I had this idea that I wanted to do something that made a difference and that was good. And it took me a long time to figure that out. You know, I'm a slow starter. The roots of Planet, I believe, go back to when I was 19. I feel like I started working on it then, when I was at university, and I studied English, but I studied health and nutrition as well. But it took me a long time. I was 28 when I decided to do Planet. And really my mission was to promote health in the community and support the Earth's biodiversity. It was twofold. And I was naive enough to not be that scared because I had no idea what running a business meant.
Right.
It's like having children. I think if you knew what that was like, you may never do it. Yeah, same with the business. So I did start with a partner who had the same idea. But our mission really was to create a supermarket that was a one-stop shop that had everything better, healthier, organic where possible. Organic was not so big then. I think we probably started out about 50% organic because it was all we could find. But also making it mainstream, because at the time organic was in the niche, and we wanted to bring it out of the health food stores into a mainstream shopping format with trolleys, which is what we did, and introduced full service meat counter, sustainable fish counter, juice bar, wheatgrass juice, health and body care as well, so people could also support their health with natural remedies and supplements instead of going for drugs or medicine.
So you had a vision and a purpose in mind. And does that mean then you wanted to be an entrepreneur? You had a vision to be an entrepreneur, to make a change in the world? Because I remember in New Covent Garden Soup Company, it was like, entrepreneur, I didn't know anything about it. I just wanted to do something very particular. What was it like for you then? Was it entrepreneurial driven, or was it purpose driven?
No. And it was purpose driven. And it took me years before I would call myself an entrepreneur, partly because I couldn't pronounce the word because it's French.
And you're
I was
American.
like, I'm not an entrepreneur. Yeah, we can't speak French. It was about purpose and living my purpose and doing what I had decided on my first day of work in England was I'm a passionate person. And if I don't absolutely love what I do, it will be a life of misery. So I knew that I would love this. I love food. I love health. I feel like I'm a steward. We are all stewards of the planet, whether we realize it or not. So it ticked all those boxes for that passion and that purpose.
I remember hearing you speak before. You talked about the reading Diet of a Small Planet. And really, was that the spark that said, okay, this is what I want to do? Or was this part of what you always wanted to do?
No, I think that was the first spark, if I had to trace it back. And I don't know, but I think I may have read that book as part of my studies around health, or it may just have been side reading, because I was in that existential phase of why are we here and what's it all about? But it's a book about the meat industry in America and the horrors that sit behind that the public don't see in terms of how they treat the cattle, how they feed them, put antibiotics in the feed, how they're crowded and how they're killed. And I read that book and I was so shocked that no one was looking after the health of the animal, the plant, or me. That food wasn't about my health. And I decided that I couldn't eat meat anymore, became a vegetarian because organic meat wasn't on the table at that time. And I thought, I want better than that. I want better than that way of farming, eating. So the seed really planted then. That was a really pivotal moment for me. And I was 19, and I also thought, actually want better in many areas of my life. I see, religion I was kind of struggling with, and I thought I'd like to feel better about myself in the religious setting, which it wasn't making me feel good about myself. I love my parents, but I'd like a better relationship than I see they have. I think there could be a better way to learn, a better education system. And so I just had this notion of I want better than what I just read in that darn book. And that set me off on a path of seeking, that I should do my own research, make my own decisions, not take what was put in front of me and be told, eat this, do this, but figure it out for myself, trust myself on that journey.
Wow.
So that started, and that meant kind of not what convention was doing, not what the masses were doing. I thought they're not usually doing better. So I started on this seeking path.
Wow. I mean, that's not just a business idea. That's a whole change the world opportunity that you've uncovered. So that's what you really were trying to change the world.
Maybe.
In a naive way, but maybe
yeah,
also
in a naive way.
practical.
And I was really shy as a kid. So this was the stirrings of a dream.
Well, that's changed.
Yeah. I'm an introvert.
Did you find then that you fell into business in that regard? You really were trying to do something that was going to make the world a better place for lots of people, and more people knew about it. They could follow that dream like you did.
Well, I started in a different job, and then I kept thinking, this isn't it. What am I going to do? What am I going to be when I grow up? And then when I was 28, I saw an organic supermarket in Boston, which is where I was from. And I thought, okay, this could work because it's doing good. It's protecting the earth. It's supporting people's health. So that really made sense for me. So, and retail, if I didn't think, ooh, I want to be a shopkeeper, but it was an obvious way to curate the best food, provide it to the public, provide information so that if people were seeking as well, they could find answers for themselves and eat better.
And retailing is a great way to make things accessible because everybody buys stuff in a retailing environment these days, online, etc.
Well,
but
the internet didn't exist.
Of course, yeah.
It was just happening when
So you got to put stuff on a real shelf and have people come in to your shop. And so that was a business opportunity. Now, did you have any business experience before then, or was that and the naivety? But there's a lot of the times an advantage, right?
Yes. No, it was naivety. When I thought, I'll open an organic supermarket, I thought I'll get experience. So I went and worked in a health food store for a couple of years to make sure, not only to get experience, but also to make sure that this was exactly what I wanted. And when I was in that shop, I thought, I'm in the right place doing the right thing at the right time. And I knew I loved it. But working in a shop is not running a business. Mm-hmm. Which I learned. But you figure it out, as does every entrepreneur. You have to do everything, and you learn.
And I know a lot of people watching this podcast, and a lot of would want to be entrepreneurs out there kind of thinking, okay, so I've got this itch, and I'm trying to scratch it, if you like, but I don't know anything about business, so I'm not going to go down that road. Yeah. What do you say to those people in terms of if you have an idea that's really worthwhile, jump in and do it and figure it out along the way, or is it more to it than that?
Well, I'm a real advocate of the business plan, but I'm also a total advocate of believe in yourself. You are on this earth to live your life, be on purpose. And if you have that strong an urge, that's probably it. And that also means that you have everything inside of you to fulfill that dream, to live that life. Because like every other part of nature, we come onto the planet with everything we need inside of us, like the acorn that becomes the oak.
Sure. I love that analogy. But you have to have confidence. So you have to have
self-belief.
Self-belief. Okay, let's talk about self-belief then. So where did that come from? Was that like a family trait, or did you even recognize you had it, or did you say, forget what everybody's telling me? Because you said earlier about having the courage of your convictions and not being a slave to the conventional wisdom. Yeah. Let's call it that. So doing stuff against the advice of a lot of people. This is how it works. This is how you do things. you go, actually, no, I want to do something completely different. And there'll be a market for it, and people will respond. Where did that come from?
Well, it's a good question. I don't know if I've ever examined that. I've thought about a lot of things. I didn't have what I would call high self-esteem. I was shy. My dad was a typical dad of those times, and he didn't say a lot, and we weren't, he wasn't overly demonstrative, but he did say some really key things. And he did say to me I remember really when I was in high school, I'd taken an exam, and I was a straight A student, but on this exam I thought, oof, I don't know what's happened. And I went to him and I said, Dad, I don't think I did well. And I was scared to tell him. We were afraid of our fathers in those days.
Sure.
And he said, Renee, he said, I don't care how you did. He said, but don't you ever tell me you didn't try your hardest. Mm-hmm. And I thought, wow. And he said, you can do anything. He said, you can do anything if you put your mind to it. And I said, really, anything? Even though I don't have the highest IQ, I'm shy, and I didn't go to the best schools. And he said, it doesn't make a difference. And I believed him because I was so naive. I am quite naive. So I believed him. So that gave me faith. But also I had a real sense of my gut. Do this, don't do that, or my heart. People call it different things, small, still voice, intuition. And I would follow that, and that served me really well.
That's really interesting that you go back to before business to learn a business lesson. A lot of times I hear people, how do I get ready for business and how do I focus on business? And it's all about business opportunities and business experience. And I think a lot of times you learn a lot of these things from your childhood. And you're just growing up, it depends on your family environment, and you just referred to that. So a lot of the examples of our stories you could put to good use in business come from pre-business days. And people don't really get that or understand that. They kind of think I need to figure out what a business plan is all about and go to business school and get business advice. What's your view on that? It's a good example. But what's your view on that in terms of using your own self-belief?
Well, I think self-belief is critical. But I also do love the business plan, as I said, because I work with startups, but sometimes people come to me, often and say, I've been running my business for 7 years, 10 years, and I'm not quite where I want it to be. And I often find they don't have a plan. And you can achieve success without a business plan. I'm not saying that. I know people who have. But when you have a plan and you create the vision, which is the what, the business plan is the how. Mm-hmm. Well, how am I going to get there? Mm-hmm. And then how do you organize your time? Mm-hmm. So I really like structure and strategy. But without the self-belief, odds are you will not achieve that. And so the business planning I believe in is a combination of the strategic plan plus working on personal development, self-awareness.
That reminds me of how I felt at Newcomer Garden Soup Company. I come back to this all the time. It's a similar time frame, but it's like I came out of university and set up the business, and it went crazy. And it was a tiger. We had a tiger by the tail. We were trying to keep up with demand, but I was kind of sitting there with huge imposter syndrome, thinking I don't know how to do any of these things. To the extent that I, in a really frustrating way, not having any time available, went to business school part-time with no time available to learn a little bit more about what this business stuff is meant to be about, because I didn't know what P&L, what's that, or balance sheet. I even get there. I just need some structure because I had no structure. It was a crazy time. But so tell me how those two sides of the coin work for you.
Yeah, and it's interesting you say that because I don't think I've met an entrepreneur. There may have been one or two who hasn't said, I have imposter syndrome. And the reason is because humans generally think, I'm not enough. That's a human thought. We don't start in the world in that way. We trust in ourselves and we believe in ourselves, but then life happens. And we start to doubt that. So then we develop this idea that we're not good enough. And that's where imposter syndrome comes from. And it's a mistaken belief. So I work on dismantling that belief, which is wrong, because I know that everyone is enough. I know that. I could prove that. But I also challenge people and say, what if you just believed? What if you just... I challenge you to believe I'm right, that you are enough and you can do anything. And what have you got to lose?
Wow.
Because it's just the ego.
That's pretty self-empowering, that is.
Yeah. And there are ways you can dissolve that and dismantle that and break that down. But for me, when I fell into coaching, mentoring on the business plan. And I work mainly with women, and women were saying to me, I have imposter syndrome, I'm a control freak. And I thought, okay, I thought I was talking to you about customer and the SWOT analysis and the financials, and this keeps coming up. So I developed a course called Boss that weaves the two together, because you're a whole person. And also because I'd have women sitting in front of me saying, I have this doubt, or my parents or my partner or my sister is undermining me or making me feel like I can't do this or whatever. Can we talk about that? And I'd say, okay, sure, because you have to solve every problem that comes up. But it's not just putting a plaster over it. It's getting down into the root and unpicking it or shining the light on it and seeing that it's really not true.
That's really interesting. Now, do you work with women purposefully, or do you find that is such an issue among women entrepreneurs, women business people, that therefore you're kind of drawn towards that? Or is it purpose, or is it as a result of the environment we're in?
I think it may be a bit of both, but women often come to me through speaking that I do.
Okay.
And I think they see me and think, oh, I get her. That resonates with me. So, but men come to me as well. You said, do I go to them? They come to me, and the balance tends to be probably 80%. It's the 80-20 rule. 80% women.
But not on purpose. Is it just a function of the environment?
I think I did think at the beginning, I really want to work with women. I really want to support women on this entrepreneurial journey because of what I had faced at the beginning and on my journey with Planet, and wanting, I went into Planet in my femininity, and I thought that was going to work. I thought that would be okay. And that meant that I started Planet as a values-led business. And I did everything that made sense to me. I didn't think, how do people do business? I didn't want to do that. I was already on this, I do things differently. I want to lead. I don't want to follow. We had very clear policies about how we treated the team and what our environmental policy was. And outside of just buying organic, which isn't just, of course, I say that as a loaded word. We thought about everything. We agonized about everything we did, and we wanted to do good everywhere.
Let's dive back into the early years, maybe. That resonated with me when you said about to leverage your femininity. That's a phrase I just used. You said femininity. Talk to me more about that and what that was like in the early days, maybe the bit of naivety, but also about the femininity and the awareness and the culture of Planet Organic, and how that then, how you became under attack, or where you found that you were rubbing up against resistance to all those things you recognized were strengths in the business you held dearly. What was that all about?
The relationship with my first partner ended in tears. It ended in the high courts. But the resistance...
And the time frame there, just take us...
So we opened in 95.
Okay.
And 2 years later, when we were doing quite well financially, he... decided to take me to court for the ownership of Planet.
Wow.
And that was massive. And where I'd started with, in my femininity and my softness, which, I really wanted to do, I had to pick up my sword and shield. And that was not really the person I wanted to be. And
you've got so many battles to fight in the business anyway, and now you're certainly fighting one internally.
Yeah.
How does that feel? How does that make you feel?
It was awful. It was the hardest thing I've ever been through. And it went on for a long time. So it was 14 months of litigation and then I can't quite remember, 10, 11-day trial in the high courts.
Wow.
So it was exhausting. It was terrifying. I was in the amygdala for all that time, fight, flight, freeze, which has an awful impact on the body and expensive. And I didn't have any money.
And a huge distraction to what you wanted to be doing, or should have been doing.
And we were trying to protect the team, keep it from the team. I said, let's not tell the team because we're trying to preserve the business no matter what happens, however this unfolds.
Now, that business, it was like we were 2 years in, so how many outlets? Was it still just the one? And how big was the team and the revenue? Just give us a feel for the size of the organization.
So the first year, we did 1.2 million. The second year, that doubled to 2.4 million.
Okay.
So we were
Strong
doing
growth.
Well. Third year, it went to 3.6.
Growing pains, in other words. Yeah.
Yeah, it was. We always said chasing a galloping horse.
Which is wonderful. I mean, that's great. So, what your vision, your idea, there is demand.
It was working.
Yeah. And then suddenly you're stabbed in the back from something you really could have done without.
And I always like to say at this point, because there's a the story goes on. This obviously is my version of the story. It's my story, and other people have their story, and I endeavor to tell the truth. But of course, it's my experience of what happened, and I bear no ill will. For all the trauma and just ugliness that has happened in Planet, I don't bear ill will. I've moved on and let go, and I think it's important to say that, because everyone has their own story.
It's easy to say that, but to actually mean it is quite a different matter, because you have to rise above all of that.
I've done a lot of work.
Okay. And it's also quite a while ago.
I've done a lot of forgiveness.
But how did you then protect the team? You're feeling your natural thoughts and your emotions, but then everybody else is kind of like you're meant to have them run the business
I know.
instead
It
of being
was hard.
distracted. How does that work?
It was hard, and as we got towards trial, you have to have witness statements. So then certain members of the team were told and asked to provide witness statements for the trial. It was really awful. And, when I say I picked up my sword and shield, I even read books on war, because I thought I'm a really good student. So I prepared the documents, I annotated everything. I had all these files with papers, and I was very good at gathering the data. I always take notes, so I gathered everything. But I read the Bhagavad Gita, which is Arjuna and Krishna discussing the holy war, the righteous war. And I read Sun Tzu's Art of War.
And you got inspiration from that, or you got tactics from that?
Well, Art of War, the main tactic, there's a lot in that book, but what I got is know your enemy. And I knew my partner. We'd been friends, so I thought, I know him really well, and I will use that understanding in my preparation. So it went to court. Obviously, I won. He lost, or I wouldn't be here.
Sure.
And he exited the company, and I had to buy out. Most of the shareholders were friends of his family. Mm-hmm. So I had to buy him out, which I didn't have the money. So we had to bring new shareholders in at that time. And then started the second part of the problem, which you referenced, which is investors who really didn't understand the values of Planet.
Okay.
Who didn't understand organic, healthy, sustainable, good business. And that was really tough. And that battle went on for about 10 years.
So in necessarily solving one problem, you kind of were confronted by another one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I know when you set up a business, you're trying to get money from friends and family, or friends and fools and family, I think people call it.
Yeah. Love money.
And inevitably, people, at that stage probably give you money or lend you money, maybe with the expectation they're never going to see it again, but they understand your mission, and they understand you, and they like you, and they want to support you, but they think, it's something worthwhile doing. And then all those people, if they're associated with your business partner, you kind of get rid of them. They're supportive perhaps in a mission of the business point of view, but you can't really have them in your business.
Yeah.
And you trade that for strangers.
Planet was all 4 years old. So I trusted they understood the values, and they were buying into that. But
that's because I said they did and didn't really? Or?
I just assumed it. And, one of the things I teach now in my coaching is don't assume anything. Mm-hmm. Don't make assumptions. Ask. Make it clear, spell it out, ask, have the conversation. But they weren't on the same page with me. And that just meant 10 years of
fighting that battle all over again.
It was difficult. It was exhausting. Yeah.
You're kind of thinking, well, if somebody wants to get in to, support, you're very clear what you're all about, and support the growth of the organic food and drink industry in the country through retailing, then of course they're going to be supportive, and that's an obvious assumption you'd make.
Yeah.
But they were more interested in, if it's organic retailing, they're more interested in the retailing than the organic bit.
People who've come into this business have been wanting to make a killing financially, and that wasn't my goal. My mission was to promote health in the community, support the biodiversity, and I believe that making money would be an outflow of that. You do good business, the money comes. But I am often confronted by, for lack of a better word, conventional businessmen who don't see it that way.
Do you mean greed?
Maybe. I don't know. I don't want to label it. But the other thing that was difficult within that is because I consider myself a small town girl, and I'm not a Harvard MBA, and it's a heart-led business, a values-led business.
Sure.
And I trust myself to steward Planet and guide it because I formed it. It's my origination, it's my creation. But then I end up with businessmen telling me what I should do or belittling me because I do things differently. And that's tough, especially because my self-esteem then wasn't where it is now.
You're getting
I
beaten
was
up every
younger.
day.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
And I thought, well, but I know this is right. And you can't argue that in the face of men who, and I love men. I'm not saying I don't love men. I love men. I've been married to a man for 40 years.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
40 years. Well
Yeah.
done.
And
To the same man, right?
yeah, same man. It's not about that. It's
Yeah.
about people doing business in a certain way and having limited thinking and me thinking differently. And sometimes I run into men who don't like powerful women.
Yeah.
And
sure.
in the face of that, they belittle women.
It may be pure chance, but it's very unlikely to be because you are a woman and they were men. So do things fall down that, sort of male, female, masculine, feminine divide in terms of attitudes? Is it very predictable or is you had some bad luck?
I don't know. I think it's a generalization. So, of course, I know there are completely different people. And I work with, as I said, a lot of entrepreneurs who've been supported by male investors who are wonderful and supportive. And that just wasn't my luck. And maybe, I believe everything in life is learning. I think it's really important to frame things as learning and not success, failure, good, bad, win, lose. Because if you take the emotion out, you think, okay, what's the learning here? So it's taking that learning. Obviously, it came into my life. So it's taking that learning and moving forward in a different way. And as I do, supporting other women on that journey so they can have that learning before they make that,
Absolutely. But
go through that situation.
For sure. But isn't that easier said than done? Take the emotion out. I mean, because your whole raison d'etre, your whole motivation and your whole vision and the whole
It's
point of the
passion.
business was about passionate belief you can do good in the world, right? Which is all about making people feel a certain way, which is emotion. So taking the emotion out, it's kind of, does that work?
It does work. It's not easy, but it's also the balance of being in trusting what's happening and not spinning out in the thinking mind. So we all have too many thoughts.
So that again, that's interesting. Trusting what's happening.
And not spinning out in the thinking mind.
All right.
So, which is the ego. If we go into fear, doubt, blame, that's shame. It's the ego. And it's recognizing that so that you're not at the effect of that, at the effect of your own mind. And that is about being in that stillness, that trust and surrender on the journey, which means, so humans are either gripping, holding on to stuff, or dropping.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're in a place of dropping, you can get out of the spinning out fear, usually it's fear, and go into, okay, this is happening. It's a problem to be solved. What do I do? Calm it down, take it back a notch.
Right.
But as you say, we're entrepreneurs and we are emotional.
That begs a question, therefore. Do you think women are better at dropping things and moving on? And it's a very difficult question to answer, I'm sure.
It's a very interesting question.
But approaching it from your point of view, what about it makes, if there is a difference, what about it makes women able to drop and move away from that and move on better than men
That's
do?
a really interesting question. Again, generalizing, men are more ego-led. I think we accept that.
Yeah.
Women are more emotion-led.
Yeah.
But women also accommodate. Women yield. They make it work. That's the female way because we're the birth givers and we navigate through the world. We navigate through this world.
In business, I think women, I see it certainly. I'll come back to the examples I've got in a moment. But from your world, it's like women see the bigger picture better at times and don't have to win every single battle. Men feel like they have to prove themselves and win every single battle, and it's just part of our makeup maybe. But you win the battle at a price of maybe winning the war.
Yes. It's interesting because I'm not a person who holds data in my head. It's actually a system, I believe, where you don't hold stuff in your head. You get it into a trusted system. But there are great stats about, that VC money, like 3% of VC money goes to women. Yet, and these are the stats I cannot remember, women are hugely more likely to hit their targets, pay their loans back, give shareholder returns. but that's still the way the world is. And that is part of this male-female conversation.
I think if there are a disproportionate number of males on the investment side of the table, you kind of get that default to completely incorrectly, in my view, but also unjustifiably, of supporting more men in a similar environment.
Yeah.
So, into a different topic there, what do we do about that? Or how do we right that particular wrong? I don't know if you have a view on that, or if that's something that
I don't.
you have an answer to.
I think other people are working on that.
Yeah, sure.
But when you said women see the bigger picture, women are more flexible, maybe. I don't know. Maybe that's why those stats are so good for women creating such great returns in business. Women have more stamina. Isn't that true? Physically.
Yeah.
You know, men can sprint.
Yeah.
I mean, these are generalizations. And again, I don't hold this data in my head, but I know that women have more stamina.
You mentioned that a few times now. That's a really interesting justification, or if you like, anchor to root that argument in. I grew up in a very, a matriarchal family. My mom was very strong, so I kind of grew up thinking as a little boy, this is how the world works. Why wouldn't it be that way? Until I then realised, actually, the world isn't like that at all. I remember my mom saying once to me, so I don't really understand why an army general would go to war and choose purposefully and leave half of his army at home and just go into battle with the other half.
Funny.
And I think, why would you do that? And that's what we do all the time, or that's what society encourages us to do all the time. Getting back to the ego bit, women in business, let's talk about women as entrepreneurs, because I believe, and I couch it before I say it, I say ego with a small e, but I think entrepreneurs need to have an ego. Otherwise, you don't get over the resistance, you don't get over the challenge, you don't kind of get up in the morning. There has to be some reason to say, in the face of everybody telling you you're wrong, no, I'm actually right. It's a very kind of male ego characteristic, put it that way. So how do women then use that to their benefit? How can women be ego in a positive way, use their ego in a positive way to fight, because you fought, right? To be successful in business in a way that is, you want to define your way. Because that, if you were to listen to a lot of men, would say, well, they don't have, they're weak. They're not able to deliver that ego, whereas men are.
I don't frame it as ego. It's interesting. You call it ego. I frame it as self-belief.
Okay.
You have to believe in yourself to be able to start a business, face all the challenges an entrepreneur does. And women trust their instinct more in general. And I think that is very powerful navigating. But I think for women to trust that they can be, I used to say in their femininity, but really it's about vulnerability. To be in their vulnerability and not have to man up. Yeah. Is really powerful. That in softness there is strength. There's a book I used to study a long time ago, A Course in Miracles, and one of my favorite lessons is, in my defenselessness, my safety lies. And that's like, wait, what? Mm-hmm. But it's in my softness, there is strength.
Vulnerability, not shying away from it, in fact, leaning into it.
Vulnerability, yeah. And also, if you come with what I learned after years of that, which I said I would never do again, is if someone comes at you and you come at them, it's physics. It's, the equal reaction. For every action, there's an equal. Sure. There's no resolution there. If you yield, if you are in softness and calmness, I think you can find solutions and navigate through really difficult situations.
Sounds like you should sit down with Donald Trump and have a word with him. So let's go back to the High Court battle then, and just understand that, and then we leave it quickly. But it's like, I talk a little bit in various contexts about adversity and overcoming adversity. In fact, leading into adversity and turning adversity to be your friend, because the more adversity you have, it means the uncertainty in the world, and you're dealing with, and the more uncertainty and the more adversity means you're onto a good thing. So what was that like for you, coming into it and going through it and then coming out the other end of it and moving on?
It started in November 97, and by the summer I was toast. I was tired, I was confused, I had no money. And everyone was giving me advice. And I thought, I don't even know what I want to do. I can't even think. Could everyone just be quiet? And I've been a meditator since 1990, and really the value is getting to that place of stillness where you can hear the small, still voice and where you can know your true self and what you want. So there was a point in the summer when I was like, shut up, I need to go away. And I grabbed my girlfriend and we went up to the Lake District to go walking in the hills. And I was like, okay, please, I need an answer. Show me the way. And nothing. Like Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And by Sunday afternoon, I thought, oh my God, what if I have no answer? And we sat down on the edge of this lake and the little waves were coming from the wind. And I sat there and I thought, you know, if I walk away, because I was done at that point, I will never know if I could have won. Whereas if I stay and fight, I can accept with grace whatever happens. If I lose, I'll walk away and say, I gave it my best shot. If I win, I get the business. So that was a really powerful moment for me. And I had decided months before on this journey that I would be in grace and dignity because it got unpleasant. And I thought, who do I want to be as I go through this? And it's a really nice question to ask yourself if you're going at any time, but when you're in a difficult time. Who do I want to be? Am I going to be happy with who I was when this is all over? So that whole idea of grace had been with me. So that turning point. So I went back to London and I said, I'm going to stay and fight, win or lose. If I'd lost, I would have been bankrupted as well.
So the stakes were pretty high.
Yeah, stakes were high. But I thought I was 32, 34 when it went to trial, and I thought I can start again. You know, I'm going to work till I'm 70, 80, I don't know. I want to do work I love forever. So I didn't feel rushed. So I thought I'll do something I can pick myself up.
So that's a great, you know, introspective lesson, if you like, for in the particular situation you found yourself, which was very stressful. I'm kind of thinking that's a great piece of advice for dealing with any stressful situation or any challenge or any uncertainty.
What's the worst that can happen?
Yeah, how bad can it be?
Yeah.
But then you have to go all in. You can't go half in because then you're kind of holding back and you've got a plan B or you get. And I think this is a great lesson for entrepreneurs too, in that you know, side hustles and do this and I'll have a backup plan. And I don't know if that works. What do you think?
Well, I'm all in, and I really thought, you know, if this is supposed to be my path, which it felt like it was, you know, this was my passion and purpose, it'll work out, or I'll pick myself up and do it again, and do it differently, you know, do it. And I had said to my husband Brian, I said, look, will you work with me if I win and get the company, because I'm no way going to have another partner and I can't do this on my own. I was exhausted. So that was part of the journey, but it was really commitment. And when you have that commitment and clarity of purpose, everyone responds to that. The people you work with respond to that. I believe the universe responds to that clarity of purpose as well.
In a situation where you're not prepared for, coming out the other end, you're a different person. Do you believe you're a different person or a wiser person?
Absolutely. I learned a lot. And the other thing I wanted to, you touched on this as well, it's when that fear is up, because people go into fear when you don't know, into the unknown. And if you can, I always say that fear has a power over you if you can't see, if you don't look at it. Because people go like this, you know, I don't want to think about that. And I always say, let's shine a light on it. What's the worst that could happen? Let's go into the mud here and
own it,
dig it out.
Yeah.
And always, every time I do that, the person says, and I say, and then what would happen? And where would you be? And would you be okay? Yes, of course. You have the strength and resilience to navigate through anything. And what happens is the ego makes the outcome a lot worse than it probably will ever be. And people get trapped in that fear. But if you can dissolve that, if you can dismantle that, go into that and shine a light on it and say, actually, it's probably not that bad. I'm going to be okay. That's very, very powerful.
That's great. Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a lot of parallels there with what I believe is the fear of failure. You know, when you fail. I mean, I sometimes say the opposite of success isn't failure. The opposite of success is not trying hard enough, or not trying at all because you're fearful it's going to end
Yeah.
up
You're
not the way you want it.
paralyzed with.
Paralyzed.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Which is the amygdala. When we go into fear, we literally go into a different part of the brain. We go into the amygdala, which is fight, flight, freeze, fawn.
Which is where you are during certainly leading into
Yeah,
the whole
for
trial
14
process.
months. But you also said, was I a different person? Absolutely. And I very carefully looked at, so the other thing is when bad things happen and you think, oh, that sucked. I always say, what were the lessons? Take the learning. Otherwise, the universe is going to give it to you again.
You go it all over again. Yeah.
So what are the lessons? And I learned care of self. I took really good care of myself as we went into this. And trusting self. And I really believe, and also knowing that I would be okay, that I would always be okay, and to surround myself with really good people. So care of self meant not only eating really well, of course I was already, not drinking, exercising, sleeping, meditating. It was also surrounding myself with the right people.
But there's a huge element of self-awareness there to figure all that out while you're in that, that valley of darkness. It's like most people go through fight, and if they survive, they come out there, and then they realize all that, but they're a wreck. I'm not saying you didn't suffer, but
I was partially a wreck.
but you figured this out going through the whole process, looking after yourself, being prepared.
So my whole journey has been strategy and self. And when I say self, I mean self-awareness, personal development, the understanding of who I am on this earth, in this journey on earth. Who am I? And you have to examine yourself. You have to take responsibility for stuff in everything, in bad situations, bad relationships. What's my part in this? So I'd been on that journey for a long time.
Yeah.
I started that in my mid-20s.
But are you speaking now as a person having amassed all this experience? Or did you know elements of this?
No, I deliberately started that journey
Wow.
of self-awareness and personal development in my 20s. It was part of that journey that I determined when I was 19 of, I want better. Well, if I want better, I have to be better. I have to manage myself. I need tools to manage myself because humans get into patterns of behavior and negative imaginings and negative thinking. And, we think like, I don't know how many tens of thousands of thoughts every day. 90% of them are the same the next day. This is what I mean about the thinking mind. And a massive proportion of them are negative. So you have to learn to manage the mind. So I'd started on that journey through meditation and personal development work to live differently.
Because most people spend most of their time talking to themselves, convincing themselves they can't do something.
Negative,
self-limiting
I know.
beliefs.
Negative self-talk.
Which I think is so critical to, first of all, understand and then decide to do something about it as an entrepreneur. Because you are swimming against the tide and uprooting the trees and crashing through the walls and everybody's telling you you're crazy and you're going, oh, I probably am. But I'm gonna do it anyway because you have some bigger purpose.
Yes. And then for me, it's also the question of, and I teach this now, this is a lot of the work I do, is how are you living that entrepreneurial journey? Because many entrepreneurs they're heading for burnout. They're in stress. They're working too hard. They're not taking care of themselves. They're not having fun. And what is the point? Slow it down. You have time. I often work with 20-something-year-olds and I say, what's the rush? Someone else is going to do it. It's all fear-based. You're going to work maybe until you're 60, 70. You have decades. Slow it down. Enjoy the journey. All we really have is today. If you're not enjoying today, what is the freaking point?
Sure. So much easier said than done. And because that makes all, in the context of what you just said, I don't think anybody could possibly disagree. But then, to that same person who agrees, go and do something about it. Actually, live, because most people don't realize that, number one. Secondly, they do realize it, but it's too late. And thirdly,
it's never too late.
But it's way after the event. And they're burnt out and they're a wreck and they've had such a negative experience and they want to learn from it because it's such a painful experience and they go and do something else. That's what I see happening all the time. Tell me about what you think about whether this is more of a problem today than it was maybe in our day, maybe in the 90s. A lot of different pressures, the world is different.
I think it is.
Is it more difficult, even more pressurized?
I think there's more pressure because of so many things. And competition and comparison within that are awful. And that's part of, I'm not enough, I'm not good enough, look at what she's doing. they've got it figured out. Well, no one has it figured out. Everyone's flailing.
But it's really easy
Some
to
people
see.
hide it better.
Yeah,
Yeah, but
just go to social media and you see so many examples of people doing better than you.
So that doesn't help.
Or so you think.
But comparison, and we know there have been so many studies about how that's detrimental to people, to teenagers, all the social media, all the comparison, all the competition. It's so competitive, and you see it all the time. And that adds a whole dimension of stress that wasn't there. And there's a lot more stress since COVID. There's anxiety through the roof. And my journey at Planet now is no stress, trusting myself, trusting in the unfolding of this journey. I was never a big comparer, I have to say, but I certainly don't do that. Know your competition, but go deep with your values and express those values in the world of your business.
Sure.
Don't be distracted by the noise of what's going on.
What do you make of this kind of argument that says Gen Zs are soft, and they're a bunch of entitled young people who think the world should revolve around them instead of they're making the world work for them? That's a very common belief that I think people of our generation have. What do you think about that, and what do you do about it if that's the case, or do you think it's different?
I don't really think about it. I don't judge.
Is that label fair? That entitlement label, is it fair?
It's not across the world, no. And it's easy to generalize, and we do that. It's convenient and it's handy. I was generalizing earlier. Sometimes it's handy. But the individuals I meet, Jen said individuals aren't those people. So I take it on a case-by-case basis. But it's not something I worry about.
Okay, let's worry about something else then.
Let's not worry.
Let's not worry about that. No, it's a very topical topic, and it's a very general topic. I'm not sure if we can do justice to that in just a few minutes. But let's talk about then, okay, part 2 of Planet Organic. So basically, you court case behind you, relief, moving into a new world, and not having to deal with that problem, not necessarily aware that another problem was brewing. Is that fair?
Yeah.
And then realizing it over a couple of years, maybe. Just tell me more about the evolution of that next phase of growth and challenge for you.
Yes, and honestly, I tend to clump it as, and then it was 10 years of this, because I don't even remember when it started. I know that after the trial, I had taken really good care of myself, but I was tired. And I had to kind of get back on my feet. Brian came and worked with me. We worked together really well.
How did you carve up the responsibilities, by the way? How did you...
Well, that's really key. You have to divide up responsibilities. And the number of entrepreneurs I talk to who say, I have a partner, whether it's their romantic partner or not. And I say, have you done your JDs? Yeah. And define your roles? No. And it's the first thing I say, because it's really smart to do. But Brian and I are really different. And it's interesting because Planet has always been about, I always say that it's values-led and commercially driven. And I'm the values and he's the commercial side.
Okay.
And that also creates a tension in the business, a dynamic tension. It's not a negative tension. But we split very easily down those lines.
Do you regard yourselves as co-founders in a way, or equals certainly a way, or is there a kind of a who gets to pull rank on something that's really important?
Who gets to pull rank? So there you go.
So
when he joined, I said,
I need to ask that question?
Yeah, I said, just to be clear, if this doesn't work out, you're leaving because it's my business. And he was
okay with that.
Well, yeah. I mean, it wasn't his business. He was in commercial property all his life. Right. This was not his idea. He was very interested in the business from when it started, but certainly after 10 years of struggle, he's like, I am done. I'm so done with retail. But when we went in, I saw us as equals. And it's funny because recently someone called him a co-founder. And in the past, I think I would have said, oh, no. But when someone said that recently, I thought, yeah, I mean, we built it together. We had that kind of initial... Yeah. I had that initial phase with my partner, and then Brian came in, and for 10 years we worked side by side. Yeah. And so I was tired, and then we started opening stores, and that created, a whole new way of setting up the business. So there's a head office and a store, and the reporting. Brian did all of that. And then who said I would never have children because of the responsibility, because those those spheres of well-being that I talked about earlier, wanting better in all those areas, I had framed that in what I call 6 spheres of well-being. And I thought...
And there's no room for kids in this.
No, I thought I have to take responsibility for developing that in a child.
Okay,
I'll have a
as
nervous
well.
breakdown. Yeah. It's not just what you're feeding them, or are they getting enough sleep? It's so I framed it as physical, occupational, psychological, economic, social, and spiritual well-being. And I thought I have to take responsibility for that for a
another
child.
person as well.
No.
Yeah.
And I do things to such
Perfection?
high level of standard
Okay.
and always evolving. I'm always looking for better, that I thought I'll have a nervous breakdown. So when we had gotten married, I said, I will never have children. And we were together for 17 years. And then I said, I want to be pregnant. Yeah. So I had 3 kids while this was going on at Planet, struggling with the shareholders. And after 10 years, we were just done. We were really tired.
So let's say you had, in a weird sort of way, 2 different phases of the business with 2 different co-founders. The first one was a mistake and the second one was a success. Does that mean now you've come out with, okay, now I pretty much clued into what a good co-founder or a good partner or a good, co-deliverer of excellence within a business needs to be? Entrepreneurs are challenged by this. They're trying to...
Absolutely.
First of all, I think I have to have a co-founder, because it's trendy to have one.
And I don't want to do it alone.
And investors
value
want
in
one,
that.
whether they do or not. So how do I find one? And what are the criteria I use? And matching and balancing somebody else's strengths and weaknesses, okay, I get that. But emotionally and all the other things you talked about there, what would you say the key criteria are for a successful co-founder?
Divide the work, tell the truth. So when I started Planet, I talked about values, and I created values in 3 ways to run through the business. Partly because I thought Planet would be sold because I had a partner and we had investors.
Okay.
And I wanted to try and protect the values and the heart and soul of Planet in case of that eventuality. So I had core values, which informed our product standard. Those were non-negotiable. That was number 1. Number 2, I had aspirational values. And that was that continuous spiral of excellence. We're always moving forward, because otherwise you're moving backwards. But the third was, so the first 2 are doing values. We're doing this, we're doing that. We're not doing that,
Sure.
And we want to do that in the future. But the third one was our being, who we were in the process of all this doing, our MO. So that informed how we talk to each other. It informed celebrations through the year. And it came from the Soil Association at the time were saying, respect the soil, the plant, the animal, the person. And I thought, oh, love that. And it is about respect. It's about respecting the gift of Mother Earth.
The resources that we've got available. Sure.
Oh, yeah. Resource. So I thought, okay, but respect and trust are kind of 2 sides of a coin and incredibly important in any relationship. So that was the top of my triangle. I call it the sacred triangle of relationships. And the bottom point is good communication.
Mm-hmm.
So that was fundamental when I was starting Planet as a value in terms of how we communicate, how we celebrate, how we, it's all wrapped up in B Corp right now. Mm-hmm. What are the rituals and celebrations and what do you do? But that was really important to me because I wanted the company to be different. And when I started, I didn't think people would tell me, oh, you can't do that. We don't do that in business. I was following my heart, and I just created that. So with partners, yes, I had that with my first partner, but it went awry. But then with my husband, Brian, of course I had that. But that telling the truth, and there's I could talk all day about what good communication means.
Right.
That is fundamental in these relationships and every relationship. But it's interesting because when I started it in Planet, I started it in terms of the team, the farmers, the suppliers, the wholesalers, our professionals, our customers. But I realized it starts in your relationship with yourself.
That's very interesting as well. I mean, what you got there is a blueprint for life, not just a blueprint for business. I mean, so clearly you're saying you take those, you're talking about relationships all the time, which is really important to a separate point maybe. But it's like, to have a successful business, you need to have the right people with the right attitudes maybe, but using those 3,
values,
trust and
respect
and communication. It's not just a business focus. So you're saying that a business is just one particular dimension of life.
Yes. And it's funny because when I started it, I applied it to Planet And then it was years later, I thought, well, this is life. And this starts, I have to trust myself, respect myself, and have good communication with myself. So if I get home from work and it was a really hard day for whatever reason, and I'm thinking, I'm going to have a couple glasses of wine, feeling sorry for myself, whatever, I'm going to treat myself, whatever people think. And my body is saying, go to bed. Mm-hmm. It's hearing that communication, trusting and respecting that, and going to bed.
Wow.
And I learned that through the litigation as well. But I started Planet with that, but I didn't take it into the rest of my life and apply it to myself until later.
Really interesting lesson there. And some people not accuse me, but I say to me, I'm like poacher turned gamekeeper, because I was an entrepreneur, and I guess once an entrepreneur, always an entrepreneur. But I set up my own businesses, and I always had outside investors involved investing in the businesses, most of the time institutional investors. And these days I'm more involved on the investment side as an VC, etc. One of the things that entrepreneurs ask me is, what do VCs look for? And there are lots of things to look for. I won't go into all of them, but one of them is team and dynamics and how people work together. And I've become better at, and I was pretty poor at before because I didn't really regard it as a main criteria. It is probably the most important criteria: who the people are, what their skill sets is, but how they work as a team. And this is what you're talking about: is trust and respect and communication. I mean, that's all about a relationship.
It's trust in teams, yes,
isn't it?
Yes, and at Planet we don't have assets other than our team. That's it. It's the people.
And the business right now is what, just in terms of where you taken it from zero, and you grew in the first few years, and you had that core case kind of distraction. I think you were about like 4 to 8 million then. I think. What's the size of the business now? Just to give a scope.
So we're 8 stores now,
8 stores.
And 31 million.
Wow.
Yeah, it's not huge. It's it's not IBM.
Well, it's not IBM, but only many businesses aren't IBM. But you the business ran into some problems around about that second phase, and growth wasn't. Everybody thought they knew the answer, which wasn't your answer. They're going to go down this particular road, and then that didn't work. And then you came back in. Lack of
respect.
So tell us more about that whole sort of piece.
Yes.
Let's flesh that out.
It's so simple, but people seem to find it really hard to grasp. I created the business. I poured my heart and soul into it, every element of it. It's not like having a child. When I first had it, people said, oh, it's your first baby. And I was like, yeah, I hadn't had children at that point. It is nothing like a child, because you craft and define every single part of it. Children come through you. They are a spirit who comes through you. You don't make them. You can influence them, but they come in as a fully formed spirit. And you know that. They don't come in the same. You have a second child and think, my God, they're completely different. How did that happen? But I created the business, so of course I have the instinct for it. I am the custodian of it. Okay. But I had shareholders
who knew better.
Who knew better,
right,
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was so disrespectful. That eventually I was, after 10 years of this and having 3 children later in life, I was an older mom. I think it was beyond geriatric at that point. So Brian was MD. So they made him redundant. They said, we need a CEO and you're not that person. And I was so destabilized and run down and tired at this point. They pushed me out, and I couldn't fight. I fought the first time. I couldn't fight.
Is this a syndicate of angel investors, or is it VC?
No, it's private individuals.
So it's
private
investors
in the company.
But they shared some vision, which was clearly not your vision, but they shared some commonalities, what they wanted to do with the business.
They did. But then what happened is the 3 of them, when I was pushed out, they then started to fight amongst themselves.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. That happens over
Can't
and over.
blame Renee now. Yeah.
When things weren't working, when results weren't coming through that they expected.
Just different vision, I think. Different idea of where the company was going. So it got to a point, I think it was the fall of 2016. I may have that slightly wrong. But anyway, I was still on the board, and I was still a shareholder and working a couple days a month. They'd push me out, but I'd clung onto that. So I was at a board meeting, and it became very clear to me that they were going to kill it. They risked killing it. So I went home, and Brian and I talked about it, and we said we have to convince them either to sell or to bring in another investor, because it was going to fall apart. as custodian, my idea was protect the company. No matter what happens, I'm not involved now anyway. I can't do much, but I can make this happen. So long story short, a VC came in. It took a while for that to happen. One of the shareholders exited. I exited at not a great price because no one wants to buy out exiting shareholders. And that is when I believe Planet really started to decline, when the VC came in. It started to really change. And then a few years later, so I think it was December, the end of 2021, they brought in a new CEO who had plans to open 50 to 100 stores.
Right.
And I was thinking, wow, how? And it was valued at $35 million. At that time, they were doing all kinds of fundraising and everything.
That's
and then
that's what the VC came in at. They came in at that
no, this
valuation
was years
prior to
later.
that,
Yeah,
right.
this was years later when he hired this CEO. They'd had a valuation. They were raising money for this big expansion. And then 3 months later, the CEO called me and said, just to give you the heads up, in 30 minutes, we're giving notice of administration. And if we don't find a buyer, the whole business goes under. And I said, wait, what? You were just, I couldn't even think. And it was a ridiculous answer. So I put the phone down and Brian said, who is that? And he said, what's going on? I said, Planet's going under. He said, what? So we sat there and he said, do you want it? And I said, absolutely not. I couldn't even see it. I was like, nope, I've moved on. I've healed.
So much pain associated with all
I'm
of
a
that.
coach now. I said, no, I'm a mentor now. I'm not a retailer anymore. I couldn't even see the gift. It was like the universe. I'd lost it, gone through that pain, and it was like, here, you could have it back. But I said, no, I don't want it, but let's cancel work for, I thought it was going to be 2 weeks. Let's find a buyer, get some of the old team back, raise money if we have to. I can do that. I am still custodian of this business.
And you were still a board member?
No.
Oh, okay. You were coming in from the outside of that stage.
Yeah, and when I'd left the second time, when the VC came in and pushed me out completely, I didn't say that. They pushed me out completely at that point. Yeah. So, no directorship, most of my shares gone, no employment.
Wow.
Broke my employment contract.
That's aggressive.
It was not pleasant again. I didn't fight then because I was doing anything to protect the company. So I went into my softness and I went into vulnerability and thought, I'm not going to fight here. I'm going to do what I need to do to preserve the company. So I left quietly. So then this call, and I said to Brian, let's rescue Planet. So we kicked into gear. Phone calls, everyone I knew, emailing people, do you know anyone, blah, blah, blah. And what happened over those 2 weeks, it turned into a month. He said 2 weeks. You never know how long. Sure. I'd never done this before, didn't know that process. 4 weeks later. So about 2 weeks in, we thought, actually, no one, it may be that no one can rescue Planet other than the two of us because it's complicated. It's a complicated business. The trade, our trade, had lost, say, £6 million. They had been lost through the administration. So I thought...
Suppliers.
So I thought, are they going to supply someone they don't know?
At their end, yeah.
And then...
but a lot of disgruntled supply chain.
A lot of, really people who were screwed. Also because Planet had decided to open its own warehouse and they'd been buying tons of stock to fill it. So it was worse than it should have been. And Planet sales were diving, and we were now at 50% of turnover. Oh. And we looked at each other and said, do we really think, because we were talking to some people and I thought, he could buy it, he could do it, you do it. And we thought,
he could run it, you mean?
Yeah, he could buy the company and run it.
Yeah.
And one person was saying, well, maybe you could be involved again. And that's when I started to think, oh, maybe I could be involved. And then we were looking at these potential buyers thinking, are they really going to be able to pull it out of the mud? They have no idea what they're walking into.
But you did.
Yeah. So Brian looked at me and said...
You knew the business backwards, and you knew the market, you knew the trade.
I knew everything. It's my life. It's been my life. So he said, do you want to make a bid? We had a tiny bit of money because we'd sold a little farmhouse in Italy where we'd lived. When I was pushed out in 2009, we left I said, I can't be here. We left the country. So we had this little pot of money. So I said, okay, let's do this differently. We'll lead a bid to buy Planet back. And we needed another shareholder to do that, which we found. And then we bid in administration, and you don't know if you're going to get it. And there was another person bidding.
Wow. Really?
So the last day, and it wasn't until like the 30 days later, we're sitting on the sofa with my phone between us, and the phone rings. I pick it up. It's the administrator, and he said, I've got good news. Your bid was successful. I'm so glad it was you.
The administrator, of course, decides purely on commercial terms, right? Because all they want to do
They have criteria they have to hit.
Yeah.
Save jobs, money in,
Creditors.
best price, pay the government, pay the debt.
So it's not as if in the future this is going to be better for the business. It's like right now, how much can I realize?
This is the best. And we looked at each other and went, holy shit.
What are we going to do now?
We both have full-time jobs. But we decided we would turn our lives upside down to rescue Planet.
But in hindsight, it was, I'm kind of thinking, if there's any good time to buy this business from a valuation point of view, that must have been it.
Oh,
and
my
it was on
God,
its knees.
It was on its
and
knees.
you knew all the things, or many of the things you needed to do to put it right.
Yeah, because they'd moved away from organic. They weren't treating the team well. They'd moved away from the values. So it was, and I've talked to customers since then who've said, I didn't know what was happening, but it was really going downhill. Mm-hmm. I wasn't going in because it was just, I had healed, but that was just too painful for me. I couldn't go into Planet. We live out of the city, so I didn't need to go in. So people were saying there was a lot of anecdotal evidence that it had really started to spiral down because they'd moved away, as VCs often do. We'll buy this company that's so special, take away its specialness, ramp it up, and death. So this is not the first time this story has been told.
Of course not. But a lot of the time they think about it in a much better, they think it through a lot more than that. They figure out, okay, what are the key elements to making this work? And okay, we could drop this bit, but keep these bits because they're really important. And we have an aligned strategy. We know who's going to run it. And it's like, it might be successful or semi-successful, but it's not a failure. Like that's a pretty poor outcome. I mean, they drove it into the ground by doing all the wrong things, you're saying.
Yeah. So
and not only are you saying, but then you came in and did all the right things and proved that you were right. So talk about that, the redemption.
So redemption. So, and the big thing for me was I was very aware of the journey I'd had. And I said to Brian, I cannot go back and fight. And I cannot go back and stress. But I'd reached a point in my life where I'm in trust and surrender. And I don't get stressed because I know how to manage myself and I meditate. So I said, I'll go in and this will be joyful and fun. And I know it's going to be really hard work. And it was incredibly hard work. So it was like 6 days a week for 2 years.
But if it's joyful and fun, you don't notice the hard work so
and
much.
It's short term. So I'm like, I can do this for a couple of years.
Okay.
So we took it to break even, and now we're making a profit. Uh-huh. And next year, our financial year ends at the end of August. Next financial year is looking really good.
And many of those disgruntled customers are back.
They're back.
Obviously.
Yeah, they're back.
That redemption, it's an easy word to just throw away, but it really is redemption, isn't it? It's like it proves a lot of stuff that to anybody that wanted to say you're wrong. No, I'm right. And here I've proved it a couple of times over.
Well, and it's funny because I don't frame it that way. The way I frame it is I knew what's right for the business. It's my business. I know it's values led. That's who we are in the marketplace. To say we're moving away from organic, that's our point of difference. That's who we are. As that may mean we only appeal to a certain number of customers, but that's who we are. That's what we do. Mm-hmm. We're not a mass market shop. We never wanted to be that. We are there for the seekers.
Right. There's a great lesson there for entrepreneurs who have values or have a mission or have a purpose in terms of setting up their business, and then they're wondering how they're scaling their business, and they realize actually the universe isn't as big as I thought, and they're really tempted to do something like maybe we can dilute our values and get more of a bigger pie.
I say stay true to your values, and I was very clear that I want still to do, but when I started, my motivation was I want to do a good thing with my life, with business. I believe in good business, capital G, capital B. And I'm going to show the world how that can work. So, but that's been such a freaking roller coaster.
Mm-hmm. Entrepreneurship is all about roller coasters and growing your business, up and back and forth and things you don't anticipate. But you got some pretty extreme swings in those whatever many, many years. What does it mean for you now? Have you taken all of that and distilled it into something meaningful? And is that where your coaching comes from?
Yes, yes. So I coach and mentor on these issues and on this journey. I use what I've learned, but it's the journey of planet. It's what I call strategy and self. It's the journey of planet and business, but self awareness, self realization, that journey of self discovery woven together into success and honest, good business. Mm-hmm. And that's been my journey. You know, that has been when I think about writing the Planet book.
That's clearly on the cards,
that
right?
Is
you've got a few chapters written already. I can tell.
It's in my head. That is, you know, if I distill it down, it's really strategy and self, and really sitting underneath that is doing and being, which are the two lines of accomplishment in life. The other thing that I find I bump up against investors with is that trusting self and being on that journey day to day is about letting things unfold. So yes, I love strategy and planning, but you have to be in awareness about what's happening and where you are and where the market's going and what's happening. So investors want crystal ball. What are we going to do next? Where are we going to be in 5 years? Where are we going to?
And guarantee
I'm like,
it.
yeah, and guarantee it. And I'm always like, well, it'll unfold. We'll see. I'm not sleeping. I am completely alert and watching and, you know, forecasting and leading and all of that. But I don't have to predict that. It will happen. Life unfolds.
But to say that to an investor, you need to have trust and relationship and communication, all the things you talked about earlier, but also you need to have alignment with that shareholder that goes,
yeah.
You say something, you're being really truthful, and you don't want them thinking,
she's on another planet.
Idea.
Yeah, she's on another planet.
Yeah,
which they do.
She has no plans.
Yeah.
No, this we gotta change all over again. You know.
Yeah.
You want someone to say, oh yeah, no, I get that, and let's be alert. And here's my view, and my crystal ball isn't as good as yours. I'm more interested in yours because you're running the business, and discuss it. And every quarter, come back to how are we doing, or are we going in the right direction? That's alignment.
It is
and
alignment.
Without that, you really are fighting battles on the outside, but a much bigger one on the inside.
Yeah.
Again.
And I talk with so many female entrepreneurs and other entrepreneurs who say, I really want to do this. I know this is the right thing to do. And not only shareholders, but other people are saying, business people are saying, why do you want to do that? You should do this. You should. And I say, please don't listen to them. You know, it's like, you know, if you're walking down the street and you walk into a situation that isn't good, you know, your spidey senses are saying, walk away. Yeah. It's that they know it's right. But because people generally think I'm not good enough, they think, oh, she knows better than I do. He knows more than I do about marketing. And they don't trust themselves, and they do stupid stuff that later they say, I knew I shouldn't have done that. Yeah. So my goal is to get people in that place where they are trusting themselves and acting on that inner knowing because they know.
That's a great level of awareness. And I see that sometimes in pitches, right? When somebody's pitching a business, right? And I like this, which is going to sound like counterintuitive, but I like when somebody pushes back, you know, because there's nothing worse than realizing you're speaking to an entrepreneur who thinks you as the potential investor knows more about their business than they do.
Yes.
And I just dreamt it up 10 seconds ago, and I just threw it in there to see what would happen.
Yeah.
And now it's suddenly the strategy of the business. I'm going, well, there is no strategy of the business, you know? So I love it when I go, well, why wouldn't you do this, this, and this? And they go, I hear you. I understand why you might think that, but actually that's the wrong thing to do because, and I have really justified reasoning because why I'm wrong. Of course I'm wrong. But they're also telling me why they're right, or at least why they believe they're right. Yeah. And I'm going, wow, this person has thought it through. Or, you know, you want somebody who knows their business and their customers and their values and their mission, all the things much better than you do. And you probe it and challenge it, of course, to test that that's the case. And I think a lot of time people go, oh, it's an investor. Yeah, we could do that. I go, well, why would you do that then? I mean, but you just said, well, I did. This is a conversation. Tell me why I'm right or why I'm wrong.
Yeah.
And I don't know, is that an expectation that people have? When they're pitching a business as to, I got to tell you what you want to hear?
Sometimes, and it's not having the courage to stand
stand
up.
up for it. Naysayers, or something you said earlier, and I got a little story. I was in Heathrow Airport once, and I met Eddie Jordan. I don't know if you know Eddie Jordan, but he used to be. He died unfortunately recently, and he's an Irish guy, and he had a Formula One team called Jordan.
My kids would know that.
Yeah, yellow is his colour, right? And he showed me his tattoo. He had a tattoo which was good, FTB, which is fuck the begrudgers. Now, begrudgers
Nice.
is kind of I think it's a word we use in Ireland a lot for naysayers, right? And he was going to say, fuck them. They don't know. It's not that you're aggressively trying to tell them they're wrong. They just don't know yet. They haven't even given them enough time. They haven't got it yet. They're just saying you're wrong. And probably just saying you're wrong because they want to prove something to an audience that I'm right and you're wrong. Fuck them. They're completely irrelevant. If you think of something, stand up for it and justify it. Or if you're not cutting through, just ignore them, which is his point. And it was so Eddie. He was like,
That's great.
yeah. He was a pioneer. He was a renegade. He was all those things like how did he end up running a Formula One team? My God, because of that attitude.
Yeah. I think you need a tattoo.
Here, all over.
On your forehead.
Exactly. I think you often can get sucked into, it's like, first of all, 80% of what you say to yourself is negative, and you try to figure that out. And then 80% of whatever else says is negative, and they're telling you you're absolutely wrong because of the 10 seconds they've had to think about this.
Yeah.
And you go, well, no, I'm not.
Yeah.
And
Well, that's why I coach and mentor.
tell me more about that then. Let's wrap up on that in terms of coach and mentor. And there's a difference, right?
Well,
tell me about the difference
who
as
knows?
you see it.
I say business mentoring, and I say personal coaching.
Okay.
I'm not a life coach, but so I do two things. I do BOSS, which I reference, which is business owners support and strategy. So the support is the self-awareness, personal development, and the strategy, support and strategy. The strategy is the business plan.
Okay.
And I weave those together, and it's interesting for me so it's a 10-module course, and how with every element of the business plan, such as values, there's a pretty neat tie-up for me in personal development. So for values, I do beliefs, and we look at the brain science, the reticular activating system, negative patterns or behavior, and tools to help you unpick and dissolve limiting thoughts. So with competition, I talk about resilience, what you do when you go off center, when you go negative. So it's a course weaving those two together, support and strategy.
What you've done is you grounded this in a lot of science.
Absolutely.
Yeah?
Yeah. I have a lot of experience in business, and I have a lot of experience in personal development through many different schools of thought and teaching, but there's a lot of brain science in there too.
Okay.
The second course I teach, which is personal development, is a year of transformational development called Be Yourself. And the tenets are know yourself, which people do,
Most people don't.
not as well as they could. Yeah. Be yourself, manage yourself. So all three are critically important. And to know yourself, I use a framework, which is a circle, which is those 6 spheres of well-being that I originated when I was 19, where I thought, I want better. I'm going to seek for a different way of living. So I have a framework to know yourself in those 6 areas. We go deeply into the self. And then the course is about being yourself and managing yourself. So the idea is that you want to be well, have well-being. And this was created in the face of COVID and the anxiety that came from that. And it was created for teams. I teach it to teams and to individuals, couples, students, university students.
So that team dynamic is important here. It's not like a lone ranger in terms of, or a sole trader, or it's not.
No.
It's a team.
No, it can be it was created for teams, because if you build well-being and trust in teams, and it's not teamwork, it's all for the individual. But if the individual's happy and well, the team is happy and well, the business is thriving. So that was the
some people
idea.
Yeah, some people have a kind of a different attitude on that. It's a very negative attitude, but it's like, it's a zero-sum game. So if I'm happy and well, maybe somebody else is less happy and well. I don't really care as long as I'm happy and well. But that doesn't work in a team environment, doesn't it? That is destructive. So it's all about the individual in that case, really.
Yeah.
I'm looking after me. I'm happy and well. I don't really care about everybody else. So how do you make sure that doesn't happen?
But that doesn't happen. That absolutely doesn't happen.
Right.
So just to go, we can talk about them more if you like, but just to go back to the
Sure.
framework. So it's, you go into the self, and the idea is that I go in with the absolute belief that you have all the answers inside of you. You just haven't accessed them.
Okay.
Or you know what they are, and it's not happening. There are blocks to them happening. Either you don't know how to embed a new habit, or you need
It's
to
all
forgive
behavior
yourself about
driven.
something,
Right.
or there's brain science, there's a pattern that needs dissolving. So it's a year of journeying through those 6 spheres in depth. And then at the end, you have tools to manage yourself, that third tenet, which is so critical. And then there's a practice using that circle that you can use daily. It's about 30 seconds, and it's very powerful. So I love coaching, mentoring, because it's the work of the heart. And retail, I love Planet, but it's insane. It's a roller coaster. But mentoring and coaching for me it's like eating cake.
It sounds like all of these are life lessons, and you can apply
They
them
are
in
life lessons, yes.
business context.
Yeah.
Yeah. And something you said as well about be yourself, know yourself, because I talked a lot about being authentic. And in fact, I'm referred to as the authentic entrepreneur. I think authenticity is so fundamentally important. I can't fathom why, but I used to do this, so we do it all the time. I can't fathom why you would choose to put another layer of somebody else on top of you. You're trying to be somebody else, or you're trying to be different people at different times.
It's the I'm not good enough.
It's the
thought.
belief that that's how you're successful.
Yeah.
So, but
Yeah.
that the reason that person is successful is because they're being authentic to themselves, and it works for them.
The most successful people
Right.
are the ones being themselves 100%.
Right.
And the happiest. Yeah. But we look at other people and say, oh, they are this, they're this. But it's such a simple thing. And of course, I teach my kids this. It's so obvious that you're on the earth to be yourself. Why would you be anything else? It just doesn't make sense. It's such a weird notion that we look at other people and think, I should be like that person or that person. No, you should be yourself. You can do that perfectly. And like everything on the earth, everything has a purpose and lives that purpose, whether it's an animal, a plant, people who understand that. You know, I don't think the squirrel goes, oh God, I'd really like to be a deer. You know, come on, just be yourself and do that really well. And you will, I believe, with that, find success and joy.
Renée, what does success mean to you now?
Oh, gosh. I just think happiness.
Top 3 books, or 3 most favorite books.
I think my absolute favorite is The Sneetches by Dr. Seuss. Khalil Gibran, The Prophet. And I read a book recently in the book club called There Are Rivers in the Sky. Beautiful book about water and memory in water.
In your opinion, what's the biggest mistake founders make?
Not trusting themselves.
What's one trait that every entrepreneur should have?
Resilience.
What's your one non-negotiable in business?
Values, which is, I guess, possibly largely telling the truth.
And what's the best day you ever had as an entrepreneur or as a business person?
People may laugh, but I'm a small town girl, and Prince Charles when he was Prince, came to Planet Organic in 1999 and walked around Westbourne Grove for 45 minutes. And for me, that was really exciting.
Let's end on that. I mean, I've referred to you in the past as being the heroine of the food and drink industry or the food and drink retail, and I think this interview has demonstrated how much of a heroine you really are, and a role model, and you know, it's not just to business people, but to female entrepreneurs, and to everybody who could take leaf out of your book. So
thank you.
It's been wonderful chatting to you. Some I knew, but a lot I didn't. So that's been.
It's been great fun.
Yeah. Thank you for coming in today.
Thank you.